Demetrius Johnson, many people say the greatest of all time, weighed in on Khabib Nurmagomedov, who many people say is the greatest of all time. And Demetrius was very matter of fact. He always is. He answers the questions that are asked. Demetrius did a fascinating interview, actually. Did you guys watch this? I'm taking for granted that you did. He even weighed in on the Ultimate Fighter, 125-pound, former opponents, the entire concept. There was a rumor in our sport that 125 pounds, the entire division, every contract, every guy was going to be sold to one championship. That never got resolution. We never got a full clarity if that rumor was true or wasn't, but Demetrius got us awfully close. He's weighing in. He talks about Khabib. And he says Khabib retired 29-0, absolutely perfect, but if he would have stuck around long enough, he would have got beat. Now, of course, that's obvious. But what is that spot? And what keeps those guys going? I'll tell you, when I was growing up, I looked up to wrestlers. It was just a sport that I knew. The guy that was the state champ or the national champ or the Olympian, these were the guys that posters were on my wall, right? But one thing that all of the greats have in common, and I mean the great, I'm talking about the Tom Brands, I'm talking about the John Smiths, I'm talking about the Kendall Crosses, the greats, the true greats, the Mark Schultzes, Chael Sonnen, I could go on and on, the absolute best of the best. They were all done and retired by the time they're 28 years old. Why? There wasn't one of them that I just named for you, the body was broken down. There wasn't one of them that didn't still want to compete, that didn't have the eye of the tiger, that wanted to be picked and predicted to win the gold medal the following year and possibly even the next quadrennium at the Olympic Games. Why'd they stop? And I'm fully convinced as I get older and I look back that you've only got so many bullets. You can only fire them so much. I mean, the guys that I looked up to, I'm talking about 4-time state champions, the undefeated NCAA champions, the world and the Olympics, they all are retired and done and in the stands by 28 years old, and not a single one of them was hurt, and not a single one of them wanted to stop, but they all did. Is that about legacy? That's what they would have told you. Every one of them to a man, throw Brandon Slay in there. Every one of them to a man would have said, I've already achieved it. I have nothing more I can achieve. Okay. So you lost to success. The success beat you. The success got you. The success made you do something you didn't want to do, which was to stop the sport that you love. I don't have a problem with this. I'm just trying to break it down. I didn't have that. I wasn't the undefeated 4-time state champion or the NCAA champion or making a world or Olympic team, so I had to stick around. Is that why I stuck around? I don't have the answer to this. I'm asking the question. You take somebody like Khabib, who had never tasted defeat, and you weigh that with what Demetrius is saying. He's saying, yeah, you never lost, but your loss is waiting around the corner. Demetrius is right. Whether that was 1 year or that was 100 years, Demetrius is for sure right. If you do this long enough, you're going to get beat. He's right. So what is that time? And I will just share with you, I fought into my 40s. One of the 50 men fought in my 40s. I wanted to have 20 fights. I was going to be completely done with sport by the time I was 30. I used to see guys that were 30 or plus at events and tournaments, putting on singlets in the sauna, cutting. I thought, God damn, those guys are old. I'm never going to do that, but I hadn't achieved what I wanted to achieve. And it was one of those situations where there was days that I was trying to be national champion. I'll just insert myself into this thought, but days I was trying to be national champion. The year 1999, didn't do it. But if you brought that same field in and you gave me them in 2009, I'd have worn every single one of them out. And there's not one of them out there watching this video that would deny it. You could add another 10 years and put it in 2019, that exact same field, bring them all. I'd have worn them all out fast. And there's not a single one of them would have denied it. Now, they also shouldn't. They stopped 21 years earlier because they could. They had achieved their goal. They had nothing left to prove. I don't get any for saying I could beat you guys today. All I get is to look like a fool for saying that. That's not the way the game is played. I don't attempt to relive it. I'm just sharing for you some of those guys like Khabib that go in there and get it done. And possibly when Demetrius is talking about this, possibly he's talking about himself. I mean, Demetrius had this beautiful record, 12 in a row. Is that what it was? 12 in a row, ranked number 1 in the world, pound for pound, not only the champion of his division, pound for pound. And possibly he looks back and goes, boom, that was the day and I should have stopped. But you never know. You never know when that day is. It's one of the things that I think was so incredible about what Khabib did. Khabib had even told us all he was going to go to 30. On 29, he put the brakes on. He never came back. I think that adds to the story. That's my own opinion. It leaves something for the next guy. If you do good business, by the way, you don't go in there and leave everybody bloody and go take everything. You leave something for the next guy. You buy a house, you fix the house up, you flip it to somebody else. You don't take all the money. You leave some for the next guy that's coming in buying it for you. That's sustainable. That's long-term. A lot of people would disagree with me. They say never split the difference. Chop their heads off, tear them off, take everything for yourself. They say that, but they're not around a real long time. So when you have somebody like Khabib, where was that loss? How many years away was it? What weight class was it at? Was he going to have to leave 55? Is it somebody that's there now? Is it Charles Oliveira? Was there one of them in the field? Was the guy with the right answers, was he in the field but never made it to him? It's one of those things. I think that's a positive. I think it makes the legend of Khabib bigger. I would never deny what Demetrius said. Of course there was one away. And you always want a certain kind of credit too, right? You know everything that's going on in your life, so you want other people to know. The scenario that I just laid out for you, some people think I sound foolish, but I think about it at night. I did not, at 19 years old, get done what I wanted to get done. If you did the same thing with the same guys when I was 29, it wouldn't have even been close. You could have done it again when I was 39 and brought all them boys back. I'd have whooped them all. But that's not the way the game is played, so why do I even bring it up? But I want other people to know that. I never lost a fight. Not really. Not like what you guys are demanding. I never lost a fight. There's nuances and glitches within the unified rules, in fairness. But I cover the spread at 3 different weight classes. Nobody even tried to. World champions at 85, at heavyweight at 205. Nobody would even try to. They'll talk about willing to do it. They'll try to get people behind them. By God, I stepped in there and did it. And I thought I would get credit for that. And I didn't always. They said, well, you lost this guy. I understand I lost this guy. He weighs 265 pounds. I'm a middleweight. It didn't work that way. I wanted it to. It didn't work that way. There was times in my career I would walk through fire. It did not. I fought with broken sternums, broken ribs, broke my arm in a warm-up session one time. Went and took on the #1 ranked guy in the world. There was other times I couldn't have got out there any faster. First time they gave me a glimpse of an opportunity. And it's one of those things where you're not getting better with time. You want people to see it. You want somebody to put it in perspective. Well, you didn't look like you had a whole lot of try in you. Well, then again, compared to any other 42-year-old, you had more try than I could ever imagine. That's how you want them to see, but they don't. It's not that way. So you got to know that time. If that's really important to you and how you're going to be remembered and going to be perceived, I think that it's often overthought. I truly do. Jens Pulver would be a great example. I would never give Jens a hard time. Jens has talked about this openly. Jens has even wrote in a book. There has never been a rise and a fall in this sport like Jens Pulver. I think he named his book Rise and Fall. I'm not giving Jens a hard time. It's quite the opposite. I only remember him as world champion. I remember that Jens Pulver that beat Dennis Hallman. First time I met Dennis Hallman, I went home, told my dad I just met the world's greatest fighter. Jens beat that Dennis Hallman. I remember when Jens beat BJ Penn. You fast forward the tape, same two guys doing the same two things. They didn't even belong in the cage together. BJ beat him so bad. How does that happen? How does Jens beat BJ Penn for 5 rounds and then not even belong in the cage with him? But I will share this with you. I don't remember that Jens. I wouldn't look at him that way. I wouldn't talk to him that way. I look at the guy that was on the poster with the belt, headlining pay-per-views, beating the best guys in the world. If Jens would have known the perfect time, he might rewind the tape and say, okay, stop the career here. I was with Randy Couture, and Randy, we were at the MGM Grand. I didn't get to be backstage. It was a big thrill for me. Before I was a fighter, I was just this tremendous fan, and Matt Lindland asked me to corner him. And I played it cool, like, yeah, I'll corner him. Oh, I was so excited. My friends thought it was cool. In between rounds, they actually zoned in on the corner, and there I was on TV. I mean, it was this big deal, right? Corner, it means nothing. It was a really exciting thing for me, and I got to be behind the scenes. And I was there the night Josh Barnett beat Randy. And we're walking to the locker room. And Randy was with his wife, Trish, who happens to be a nurse. And Randy had some notch. Josh had him down and elbowed him. And I remember Randy's sweaty. and he's tired and he just lost his belt and it wasn't what he wanted. We're walking to the locker room. He turns to Trish and he simply says, if you stick in this long enough, that's going to happen. And Robert Follis was there and Nate Quarry was there. Trish, myself, nobody said anything because it didn't need to be said. Randy just summed it all up and it was just the truth. If you stay in this long enough, eventually somebody's going to throw you down, pin you in the fence, and elbow you until Big John pulls them off. It's just the truth. Finding that perfect spot, it just doesn't work that way unless you want to leave some on the table. Like the guys I told you that I look up to that won the states, they won the nationals, they won the Olympic Games, and they walked away. They didn't want to. They felt good, but they walked away so that they could be remembered as going out as champions. If that was most important to them, it wasn't for me as a fan. I wanted to see all those guys. I want to see Kendall Cross wrestle another match. I want to see Brandon Slade move up to 180 pounds, challenge Chael Sanderson. I want to see Chael come back in 2012. I mean, I could play this game on and on. Brands is in the room twice a day, every day. He shows up to the tournaments, but he doesn't step on the mat. What? Why? Why? It's one of those things. And if you asked him and they could go back, they wish that they would have had those moments. But you got to make that decision. And there's more that goes into it. These guys feel they're being watched. They feel they're being judged. They feel because they know their own career well that we all know their career so well. I could think of my favorite fighters. Greatest to have ever done is George St. Pierre. I don't know what his record is. I watched every one of his fights. Do you guys know his record? I know how to get it. I could look it up. The only guy whose record I know is Khabib's. It was 29-0, but the only reason I know it is it was a perfect 29-0. Khabib would have done 27 times to 31 times. I wouldn't even know what he was. I wouldn't even know. But we think that they know. The same way as I want credit. Might not have shown the most heart, but you won't find a 42-year-old that tried hard. Well, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't. So as Demetrius is weighing in and he's talking about Khabib, he's completely accurate, but he's also representing how he's feeling inside. Demetrius got a big fight coming up, and it's about redemption. He's not going to get this shot again. This guy stopped the streak of 12-0. This guy brought down the #1 contender. The guy on the video game, the guy with the big sponsorships from Microsoft versus the guy that nobody else knew of. It's what Marias represents. Demetrius not going to get it. Very few times in life you get a redo. He's getting a redo, but he's not going to get another one. And when he's talking about Khabib, when he's pointing a finger in Khabib's direction, he's got 3 pointing back at himself. Demetrius, while describing Khabib, was talking about himself. He gets a redo. Not going to get another one.